The harmattan had teeth tonight. Azindol crouched behind a cluster of shea trees, fingers pressed into cracked earth that still held the day's heat like a grudge. He read the vibrations the way Samini had taught him before the exile, before everything. A heartbeat stuttered through the soil 50 paces ahead, faint, arrhythmic, a fist hammering on a door that would not open. Something was dying out there in the grass. His shadow shifted. Not from the wind, not from the sliver of moon fighting through Saharan haze. It moved on its own, curling around his ankles like a hunting dog straining at a leash, and the movement cost him a dull ache bloomed behind his left eye, familiar as hunger. 3 days the binding had been restless, ever since the harmattan reversed direction. South instead of west now, carrying whispers he could almost parse, and the mineral stink of deep desert, mixed with old ash from someone's bushfire leagues away. He pressed the shadow flat with a thought. It resisted. It always resisted now. 3 months since Ironhaven had cast him out. 3 months eating what the Vale offered, bitter shea fruit split open with his thumbs, smoked grasscutter when he could catch one, water from the clay-bottomed pools that tasted of iron and laterite. His fugu was filthy, stiff with sweat and dust, the plain weave cotton cracking at the seams. Some nights the cold came through the cloth and found his bones, and he would curl around the last embers of a dung fire and think of nothing at all, because thinking led to remembering, and remembering led to Ironhaven, and Ironhaven was a knife he had learned not to pick up. The Cambonaba's guards had dragged him past the last waystone with a promise: cross back and your skin will be taken. Not the office he had never held. His actual skin, flayed from bone by the Enskinment's curse. The punishment for a failed candidate who refused to accept failure. Except Azindol had not failed. The Enskinment had rejected him. There was a difference, though no one in Ironhaven had cared to hear it. He moved through the grass in a crouch, following the dying heartbeat. Dust coated his tongue, gritty and alkaline, and the strip of cloth wrapped around his face did nothing to stop it. The Savannah Vale stripped you down like that, grain by grain, until there was nothing left but the thing you were trying hardest to hide. He smelled it before he saw it. Not rot, something worse. Burnt iron and sweet decay, the stench of power eating its host from the marrow out. He had found 2 others like this in the past month. The first time he had tried to help pressed his hands against the man's cracking skin and pushed his own threadbare power into the fractures like mud into a leaking dam wall. The man screamed, seized, and came apart into gray ash that stained Azindol's palms for a week. The second time he kept his distance and watched a boy 15 at most fold inward like paper thrown on a fire, 20 paces away, close enough to hear every sound the boy made and do nothing about any of them. Both times the bodies were gone before dawn. Scorch marks on the earth and the ghost of a geometric pattern branded into the soil where a person used to be. This one was a girl. 17, maybe 18. She lay curled in the grass like a child sleeping, except her skin was cracking open. Hairline fractures ran along her arms and throat, glowing faint amber where the power leaked through like magma through cooling stone. Her lips shaped words that had stopped carrying sound. A beetle crawled across her outstretched hand, and she did not flinch. Azindol knelt beside her. His shadow writhed, straining toward the girl's fractured glow with something he could only call hunger, and the ache behind his eye sharpened into a spike that made his jaw clench. He pinned the shadow harder. Something warm trickled from his left nostril. He wiped it with the back of his hand and did not look. "The skin," she whispered. Her voice was a ruin dry and cracked as the harmattan earth, as though the dust had crawled down her throat and settled there. "The skin is wrong, all wrong."
"Who unskinned you?"
He kept his voice low, the voice you use for dying strangers and frightened animals.
"Which chamber?"
"The main chamber, Ironhaven." Her eyes focused on him for one terrible, clear moment. The leopard hide was on the dais. It chose me. I felt it pull, felt the ancestors reach through the hide and grip my bones. A wet, broken laugh that ended in a cough. Amber light seeped from the cracks in her lips. But it wasn't real. A copy that eats. His jaw tightened. He had suspected felt something wrong during his own candidacy. a dissonance in the ritual like a drum falling half a measure behind, but hearing it from a dying girl in the wastelands turned suspicion into a stone lodged under his ribs.
How many others?
A7. The cracks widened. Flakes of skin lifted from her forearm and dissolved into luminous ash the harmattan took like sparks from a bush fire. 7 of us sat the skin in the last moon cycle, 3 dead already. I watched Fashani's face come apart like old pottery. She shuddered, and something inside her flickered, amber light, guttering like a flame in wind. And the sound when the bond tried to hold, and the pattern pulled the wrong way like cloth tearing. But the cloth was him. She seized his wrist. Her grip was iron, fueled by the dregs of the corrupted bond, fingers digging into his skin with the desperate strength of someone clinging to a cliff edge. Your shadow. She stared at the darkness pooling beneath him. It's awake, you're the one who. She stopped. The cracks reached her face, branching across her cheeks in a geometric pattern Azindul recognized with a sick lurch. Not the true pattern. Not the ancient script connecting a chief to the ancestral line, the sacred mathematics passed from skin to skin across 1,000 years. This was a distortion, a forgery spiraling inward instead of radiating out, a parasite wearing the shape of a gift. Every candidate who sat that skin was being eaten alive. His shadow broke free. It surged from beneath him, wrapping around the girl's hand where it gripped his wrist, and the contact hit him like a fist to the base of the skull. His vision whited out. Then blackness, not absence but presence, thick and heavy, pressing against his skin like deep water. His stomach heaved. Cold sweat broke across his shoulders, and the ache behind his eye became a sound, a high, thin whine that had no business existing outside his own head. Then light, the Enskinment chamber. Circular walls of red clay. A low ceiling carved with 1,000 years of chiefly genealogy name spiraling into name toward the center, where the oldest had worn so thin they were more feeling than script. The leopard hide sat on the stone dais, ancient and scarred, its spots darkened by 100 chiefs touch across 100 generations. The air hummed with a vibration Azindul felt in his teeth, in the roots of his hair, in the marrow of his wrists. Something stood behind the dais. A figure in a smock so dark it was not cloth but the space where light chose not to go. Its hands rested on the hide, and where they touched, the ancestral pattern shifted, twisted. The geometric script rewrote itself under those fingers, sacred lines bending inward like a mouth closing around a scream. Azindul watched 1,000 years of legitimate succession being overwritten in real time. Each stroke precise, deliberate, patient as a weaver at a loom. He tried to see the face. His shadow strained toward the figure, pulling his vision closer, stretching the dark between them taut. The figure turned. Azindul saw nothing. Not darkness, not a blank face. An absence where features should have been, smooth as a river stone, and behind it the unmistakable sensation of being seen. Recognized, catalogued and dismissed in a single heartbeat. The figure pointed at his shadow. The vision shattered. Dust, grass, moonlight, the savanna veil crashed back, and with it a nausea so violent he pitched forward on his hands and retched. Nothing came up but bile and grit. His arms shook. Gray crept into his peripheral vision, and when he dragged the back of his wrist across his mouth, 3 hairs drifted from his temple white where they had been black that morning. The harmattan took them before they touched the ground. The girl's hand had gone slack on his wrist. The cracks had consumed her. She stared at the sky with eyes already turning to ash, and the amber glow beneath her skin faded, and the last word she spent her final breath on was one Azindul did not know. Zagele. Then she was gone, ash and scorch marks and the ghost of a corrupted pattern fading from the soil. The harmattan scattered what remained of her as if she had never existed. Azindul sat in the grass for a long time. His shadow coiled and uncoiled around him, tasting the residue of the vision, and he pressed his palms against his eyes until the phantom weight of being seen by that faceless thing dulled to a bruise he could carry. Zagele, not Dagbani, not Frafra, not Mampuli, not Ganya, something older. Something from before the factions staked their claims, and the Enskinment gave those claims the weight of ancestral law. The harmattan shifted. South-southwest now, carrying the dry grass smell of the deep savanna, and beneath it, faint as a memory the rhythmic pulse of Lunsi drums. The Damba preparations had begun. 7 days until the alignment. Even in exile, even cast beyond the waystones and stripped of faction and name, the drums found him. That was the point of the drums. The sound split something open in his chest. He let it, just for a breath. Then he closed it again. A flutter of cloth cut through the haze. His hand went to the iron knife at his hip unenchanted, the only weapon the guards had let him keep. But the shape descending from the dust was not human. A bird woven from fugu strips, indigo and white cotton animated by textile magic, each feather strip rippling with independent life. A weave bird, courier of the Weavers' Guild, repurposed by Ironhaven's court. He had not seen one since his exile. It landed on the scorched earth where the girl had died and cocked its cloth head, regarding him with button eyes of black thread. Its beak a sharp fold of starched cotton opened and closed, testing the air. Then it shook itself like a real bird in rain, and a small scroll of fabric unfurled from its breast. He knew the seal before he looked. 3 horizontal lines pressed into the cloth. The last time he had seen that pattern, it had been on the bottom of his exile order. Pognazara.
She knows I'm exiled.
He told the bird.
She signed it herself.
The weave bird waited. Textile magic did not understand irony. He took the scroll. Thread so fine, it was nearly invisible against the cotton Pognazara's hand, each letter a tiny act of weaving. The skin rejected another. The 7th in 3 moons. The Damba alignment comes in 7 days, and there is no one left to sit the renewal. I cannot hold Ironhaven without a completed Enskinment. The factions smell weakness. Come home, your exile ends at the gates. PZ. His shadow read the message before he finished. He felt it react, a bolt of cold that shot from the base of his spine to the crown of his skull, sharp enough to buckle his knees. The binding had found something in those words. Not the politics, not the desperation. A resonance between the corrupted pattern he had seen in the vision and Pognazara's 3-line seal. A thread connecting 2 things that should not be connected. His shadow wanted to go. Azindo burned the cloth. The weave bird collapsed into a handful of cotton, threads the harmattan scattered like seeds. He was not going back. Ironhaven had cast him out for refusing to accept a candidacy that was no failure. Pognazara had signed the order with those same precise hands, and whatever siege she faced now, the factions circling, the Enskinment failing, the dead piling up in the Vale, it was not his war. He owed the skin nothing. He had watched 3 people die from a corrupted Enskinment in the past month. Whatever that faceless figure was doing to the ancestral pattern, going near it was not courage. It was a throat offered to the knife. He was not going back. His shadow stretched north. It pulled from him like a second body trying to stand, elongating across the scorched earth toward Ironhaven with the blind certainty of a compass needle. Azindo planted his feet and willed it back. The shadow resisted not with its usual sullen weight, but with intent, with direction, with the terrifying clarity of something that had made its own decision. Pain lanced up his spine and settled behind both eyes now, a pressure building like water against a cracking dam. The binding had heard the drums. It had tasted the corruption through the dying girl's skin. It had read the summons and found in those words something Azindo's waking mind had missed. His shadow knew something he did not. Azindo stood in the Savannah Vale with the harmattan scouring his face raw and the Lunsi drums pulsing at the edge of hearing, and his shadow straining north like a hound on a scent it would die before abandoning. The night tasted of dust and blood and something older than either. He could feel his hair graying. And he was no longer certain the shadow would wait for him to decide.